Good morning, afternoon. I guess it's technically morning. It's not lunchtime yet. We'll give everybody a minute. Oh, I'm actually a minute early. We'll give everybody just a few minutes to hop on, and then we're going to get started. Today, we're going to talk purchase agreements. So,
Perfect.
let me go ahead and get my screen shared while we're waiting on everybody. All right, got a few more people popping in, so we'll give it just a minute and we'll get started. All right, it's 11:30, so I'll make sure I got my recording going. I do. I'm gonna go ahead and get the ball rolling. So, um, I well, there's two different purchase agreements that we can use, and what I have in front of you for the people who are members of Gore, this is probably the purchase agreement that you're the most familiar with. I'm not going to. I'm going to go over this purchase agreement, but I'm not going over it today because I have recently, just in complete honesty, have recently had a change in philosophies on which purchase agreement is best. So what I want to do is go over the state contract with you. They all contain basically the same information, but the state contract just has some stuff in it that kind of protects you as the agent and protects your client, whether you're representing the buyer or seller, at a slightly higher level. So, if any of you have, especially for those of you who are in Owensboro, if you have questions specifically about the Gora purchase agreement, just reach out to me, or we can do a little subclass on just that. But instead, what I want to show you, and I don't know why it's doing 2 pages. I don't know how to change that. Hold on one second. Single page. There we go. But instead, what I want to go over with you, if I can get it to, it's only showing me every other page. Hold on a second. I got to figure out what my computer's doing here. There we go. Okay. Um, so what I want to show you all, please forgive me. I know it hurts on the eyes when you're scanning that fast, but I want to show you the state contract. So what I have here is the state contract. This is actually the Louisville contract. So for those of you who are members of GLAR, you're pretty familiar with this already. The state contract is basically the exact same thing, just except for at the top, it's a state contract. There's two major differences in the state contract and the GLAR contract. I'll go over that with you. The state contract, we do have copies of that you can review as well. So let me get my notes out and let's dive into this thing. So first and foremost, when it comes to writing a contract, y'all probably heard me say this before, but this is the thing that can get you in trouble. So please make sure that you know your contracts. And when I say make sure that you know your contracts, actually sitting down and printing out copies and reading the contract. To this day, I still print out, highlight key points of a contract, and review it. Now, I've been doing this for about 13 years or so, maybe 12 years. But anyways, I've been doing it for a decade or more, and I still review contracts at least once a quarter. Just especially if a new contract comes out, I'm definitely reviewing it. But again, this is what determines how the whole transaction is going to flow. It also sets whether it's your buyer or your seller up to be able to understand what's going to happen and to actually make your job easier because we're covering so much on the front end to make sure that you know what you're talking about. So I'm just going to start at the top. And go through this contract. Number one, first and foremost, as you can see here, I wish this would let me highlight, and it doesn't. Hold on a second. I might actually try to pull up a separate contract. Let me try something else. Yes, here we go. We're going to use this one. Okay, so this is the same contract. This is a statewide contract. So, like I said, statewide contract, as long as you're a member of NAR, which all of you are, then you can use this. First and foremost, at the top of the paragraph right here, this is really important. It says, this is a legally binding contract governed by the laws of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I need you to say that to your clients. For some reason, I feel like a lot of buyers are not understanding that they're signing legally binding contracts and they're just like, hey, you know what? I changed my mind. Well, yeah, you can change your mind and we can try to get you out of the contract, but there's no guarantees because you are signing a legally binding contract. The next thing in this paragraph that I think is really important is this section right here. And it basically says that both sellers and buyers acknowledge they have not relied upon the advice or representation of brokers or agents regarding, amongst other things, legal, tax, and tax consequences of this contract. And seller and buyer acknowledge that if such matters have been a concern to them, they have sought and obtained independent advice relative thereto. Basically, what this is saying is, because I get asked this a lot, especially if you're selling a property on whether it be an investment property, capital gains tax, things like that. I'll answer the question to the best of my knowledge, but I always follow it up with this statement. However, your situation is unique. Your tax bracket is unique based on your unique financial situation and how long you've owned the home. Please go talk to your accountant to be able to identify those numbers. But it does put this, and this is why this is one of the about 10 different reasons I've recently changed my mind to saying this is a better sales contract. This is number one. It protects you. It lets them know right up front that, hey, if you have legal or tax advice, go seek out those people. Okay. Next thing, calculating days and time. I like this. It makes it clear. I don't like gray areas. So all days are calendar days, midnight to midnight, calculated beginning on the first day following acceptance day or applicable notification day. The time of day should be calculated using the local time of where the property is located. I like this because it specifies exactly how many days are on everything. The day this is signed does not count. It's the first day following acceptance. This is really important. So when we get into inspection periods here in a little bit, you'll know how to calculate that. Top section, obviously lines 13, lines 13, this top two lines are who is the listing agent? What's all of their information? Down at the bottom, lines 17 through 22, 17 through 20, who's the selling agent? The selling agent is who's representing the buyer. So all of your information is going to go here. Yeah, go ahead, Norman. You got a question? DJ, sorry, I just saw Norman, made me say it.
You're fine. So I noticed something when I've been filling out offers. When I fill out like the offer on the GORA contract, when I put the listing agent, it fills in like the offer prepared by part 2.
Yes,
And
it does. We're getting that corrected. So, the setup of DocuSign has been a headache, as you all know. We've talked about that before. I'm meeting with them next week to review every single one of our contracts and work on getting stuff like that corrected, as well as getting this contract uploaded in there because currently all we have is the GLAR contract uploaded.
Okay, gotcha.
No, but thank you. And if anybody sees anything on a contract, screenshot it, circle it, text me, call me, whatever. Let me know. Because like I said, I'm meeting with them next week to try to get all of that squared away anyways. So next, printed name of the buyer. And then if there's two buyers, obviously you print the names of both buyers. Property, this is just the property address, really simple. Number 26, line 26. So we don't ever want to leave blanks on a purchase agreement. So I want you to either fill out information or draw a dash. Okay, so if you need this information, you can go to the PVA. PVA will tell you what the deed book, the page, block number, lot number, and if there's a sublot. But you can also just cross through these. So just draw a dash. Just the key is don't leave any blanks on a purchase agreement. You don't want somebody to come in and fill something in after everybody signed and say, oh, no, it's already been there. Then good luck trying to prove whether or not it was. So that's why you want to do that. In the county of, obviously, in this case, you're going to put what county the property is in. And then next it says, together with all improvements and fixtures, which are acknowledged by all parties not to be personal property, including but not limited to. So these are your fixtures, right? So this is your lights, your ceiling fans, gas logs, mailboxes, bathroom mirrors, so you can read through this and see everything. One thing that is to note, storage sheds are considered a fixture. Television mounts and brackets are considered a fixture. So people can take their TVs, but technically they're supposed to leave their brackets unless you do an exemption. And we're going to talk about that here in a couple lines. But line 34 is appliances. So you'll check refrigerator, everything that's staying, plus you have a write-in spot if you need to add anything else. So it'll allow you to add as much as you need to. Next line, line number 37. Sellers shall remove the following fixture prior to delivery possession. If they're going to take their TV mounts, that's where this goes. If it's not in here, they need to leave them. Same thing with the storage shed, or anything else. If they have a antique light fixture that maybe somebody in their family gave them, they want to take that with them. Well, if you're a listing agent, best advice you can give the seller is remove it before you list the house and put something else in its place, because you're gonna have to do it at some point anyways. You might as well do it now and overcome that objection. But if they don't, for whatever reason, you need to make sure it's listed in here, even if you're counter offering back to them. Line number 39. Reason number 2, I like this contract better than the Gore contract. And this is nothing against the Gore contract. This is just my personal opinion. Fuel and propane tanks, are they owned or are they leased? Do they remain or do they not remain? A lot of people don't realize this, but most propane tanks are leased. And when the seller sells a home, that company will basically come and take that tank away, because their contract's with the previous person, not the new person. So you need to clearly outline, if it has a propane tank, is it staying and is it owned, or if it's leased. If it's owned, obviously it's very easy to transfer. If it's leased, you need to go through and help your buyers be able to transfer that over. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to click page. There we go. All right. Next section is, how are we paying for it? Purchase price. This has to be filled out. How much are we paying for the home? Earnest money deposit. This has to be filled out. Even if it's a 0, you have to put something in here. Number 3, payment this is how we're going to break down how are we paying for the house. So payment of the purchase price is, are we paying cash? And if the answer is yes, then we're going to put in the amount or the percentage. So this can be your down payment. So most people bring, even though it's not cash, they're bringing a check as part of their down payment, and we're putting in the amount there. So for example, if you're doing a 20% conventional or a 3.5% FHA, you would write 20% or 3.5 and draw a blank through the other line. If you know the amount they're bringing, and let's say they're bringing $10,000, you would write in 10,000 and draw a dash through this line. Just fill out one or the other, dash the other one. Are they getting an equity line, a gift, or some other way to bring money to the table? And please understand, if people are pulling money out of their 401ks, if they're getting a gift from their parent, if they are cashing out some bonds. I had this recently. Somebody's cashing out a bunch of bonds and CDs in order to buy a home. We have to actually say where that money's coming from. It's not cash unless it's money in the bank. So please understand that. If they have to do anything at all to receive that money, it's not cash, and it's going to fall on line number 45, and you fill that out. Okay. The remaining amount. So again, this is going to be what we're putting down in either cash or one of those other options. The remaining amount, we have to select what type of loan is it. Is it conventional, FHA, fixed rate, adjustable rate, or other? If it's other, you can kind of fill that in here. Maybe it's like a home equity line, something along those lines, or a second mortgage or something like that. Next one is loan amortized over blank number of years. You have to put this in. How many years are they paying for the home? It's usually going to be 30, but there are some exceptions to that. With interest rate not to exceed X%. This is crucial, y'all. Don't put in today's rate. So if today's rate, and I'm making up a number, but I'm not far off. If today's rate's 6.5 on a conventional, what you want to put in here is, what's the maximum amount that your buyer is willing to pay? So in this case, I'm having a conversation with the buyer and I'm saying, hey, if interest rates were to hit 7.5 over the next 30 days, you're going to move forward buying this house? If they're like, yes, then I'm like, okay, what about if they hit 8? And they're like, no, at 8, I'm out. Well, I'm putting in 7.5 right here, because it'll tell you down here, it says contract is contingent upon buyer qualifying for the loan and the above financing terms or condition or better. So basically, if interest rates something more crazy were to happen, interest rate jump up to 12% tomorrow, it gives them an out of the contract. And I like that. Our other, by the way, the Gore contract has that part too, but I don't see people fill that out correctly a lot. So I just wanted to slow down and kind of explain that. So this is the maximum percentage that they're willing to go to. If it's an adjustable rate, same thing goes in here. The adjustments are limited to the following. What's the maximum amount that it can be adjusted to? And you might have to contact the lender to find that out. And then next one is earnest money. So lines 51 through 57 are all about earnest money. It says if the buyer has acted in good faith, does not qualify for the loan, the buyer may void the contract and receive earnest money deposit and refund. The buyer deposit in lines 42, 44, and 45 is not a contingency. The buyer must approve from the loan within blank number of days. So this is in every contract that you ever sign, no matter which one you use. But this is crucial. This is a crucial piece. Like, we actually need to make sure our buyers are hitting these timelines. Because here's why. Failures to apply to the loan shall constitute a breach of this contract, in which case the seller may either grant a extension of time to apply for the loan, void the contract and keep the earnest money, or pursue claims and damages as a result of this breach. Basically, mediation, suing somebody, stuff like that. Most likely, they're going to void the contract and keep the earnest money. So that's why this is really important. Okay? So just know that. All right, page 2, lender contact information. You actually have to write in who the lender is here. I like this for a number of reasons, especially when we get into here in just a second. But the next part is the seller agrees to pay certain costs on behalf of the buyer, which includes but not limited to prepaid expenses to the buyer's financing. So basically, this is the section where we are putting in how much we're asking for in closing costs, prepaids, etc. So you can either ask for none, you can ask for up to a dollar amount, or you can ask for up to a percentage of the purchase price. It just makes it nice and clean. We're not having to practice law and in further conditions put in anything outside of compensation that we're expecting, and we'll go over that when we get to that section. It has a section in here. Another reason that I like this is that it basically outlines that the seller is advised that there is certain fees imposed by FHA, VA, USDA that must be paid for the seller. So for example, VA, we all know sellers must pay for pest inspections, right? So it kind of outlines that. Next part, earnest money. And I'm going to move fast through some of this stuff because I know y'all know it. But earnest money must be delivered within 3 days. This is the crucial piece. You actually have to have that money received and deposited in 3 days. And then we have to declare where it's being held, in what escrow account. So in this case, you would write in Keller Williams Elite. Now, I think it's really important to also explain to our clients, how does earnest money get released? No matter what happens, whether it's ideally at a closing is when it gets released and brought as part of the down payment. But failure to deliver the earnest money will result in you voids the contract, and it can only be released. Sorry, I highlighted the wrong section, is what I meant to say. That the earnest money may only be released in one of 3 ways, and that is basically, oh, I still highlighted the wrong part. Sorry, I'll get it right here. Here it is right here. Deposit shall, now I don't know why my screen moved. There we go. My mouse is doing something crazy. Okay, so if either party fails to perform his or her obligations, the other party may accept the deposit as liquidated damages, and be in the event that legal action is necessary, that the earnest money shall be reimbursed, but you cannot exceed, and this is a crucial part, 3 times the deposit amount. So just know, if somebody goes and you have to go to court and stuff like that, if somebody does a $500 deposit, then you're only going to be able to get $1,500. I think that's a really important part. The other part that I was trying to highlight before my computer went crazy was the deposit shall only be removed from the broker's escrow account in one of 3 ways. From closing, which is ideal, written agreement from all parties, basically everybody agrees where the money is going to go, or by court order, or there's a 4th option where it is by law. That's broker decided, and we can get into that at a later date. Next section is all about appraisal. Nothing inside of this really changes. You're either checking this box because there's a lender involved and lender's going to require you get an appraisal. You're checking box B if this is private financing or cash, and you have to put in how many days they have in order to be able to get the appraisal. Or C is it's not contingent upon the appraisal being done. There's one other section in here that says that if a property doesn't appraise, then the buyer must, within 5 days of discovering the appraised value in writing, either waive the appraisal, say, hey, I'm willing to buy it regardless, and bring money to the table that's above and beyond what it appraised at. B, negotiate with the seller on a new purchase price or new terms, or C, void the contract at which the buyer shall receive the earnest money. So I think this is important that you have 5 days to do that. And I think this is just know you can't, if you find out that a home doesn't appraise, you can't just kind of sit on and be like, oh, I'll take care of that next week, because in which case it could be a potential violation. Proration, it just says taxes are prorated. I think you all know that. Section 7 is limited home warranty. Our preferred partner is 210 home warranty. We have flyers around the office. You can grab those. But basically, if you're asking the seller to pay for it, you need to check this box and write in how much that home warranty is going to cost, and you'll refer to that flyer for that. And then next is the buyer can either agree to purchase it themselves, so they're not asking the seller to purchase it, or the property is a new construction and it comes with some sort of warranty, a minimum of 1 year, which all of our people that do construction around here are given more than that. So you would check that box. So those are your 3 options in regard to that. Of course, you all know seller disclosures are required for residential properties and anything that is less than 4 units. So 4 units or more, you do not need a seller disclosure. It's considered a multi-unit. Commercial, you do not need a seller disclosure. Anything 3 units or single family homes, you do. 2 options here. You either check the box that says I've received the seller disclosures, or, and this is reason number 3 that I like this contract better, is you can check B if you don't have seller disclosures. Brand new listing, they haven't put seller disclosures on the MLS yet. You can still move forward with making an offer, and you check this box saying that the buyer has not received the seller disclosures, and that the buyer, in this case, under Section B, buyer may void this if contract if seller does not deliver within 3 days. So basically, you write the offer. If you don't get the seller disclosures within 3 days, then the buyer can void the contract. If they do deliver it within 3 days, the buyer gets 1 day to review and decide if they want to move forward or not. If they choose not to move forward, then obviously the earnest money would be released to them at that time. Lead-based paint. Very simple. Y'all know this. If it's built before 78, it requires a disclosure. If it's built after 78, it does not. And then part 2 of that is the buyer can either waive their rights to get a lead-based paint inspection, or you can check box 2, and they have a certain amount of time in order to get a lead-based paint inspection. Next part is all about inspections. Of course, I'm going to ask all of you to read this in great detail, but the key points that you need to know is that a buyer is recommended to get a inspection on any property that they purchase, and that inspections or appraisals are required for FHA, VA, or potentially even the buyer's lender, but those don't suffice as a full-blown inspection a lot of times. Even a VA, who is the most complete inspection, it's still not to the depth of a home inspection. So they're basically saying we recommend that you get one. Then inside of here next is it says the parties do not the brokers and agents do not recommend specific investors or specific inspection companies. All inspectors are deemed to be chosen by the buyer. Now, if your buyer asks, can you give a recommendation? Yes, but you need to let them know it's up to them to choose the inspector. This is important because if somebody chooses an inspector, or even if you recommend an inspector, you don't want the liability if that inspector has an off day and does a bad job. So that's why it says that. And actually, the very next statement, it says, the parties release each such buyer and agent for liability for any defect or deficiency now existing or later discovered relating to this property. So that's the kind of CYA version of this paragraph in this contract. It also goes on to say, and this is another reason, and as far as I remember, I don't think our GORA contract says this, but if a property is damaged, this last paragraph here, if a property is damaged during the inspection period, it is up to the buyer to fix whatever was damaged. They have to put if the inspector accidentally knocks a hole in the wall, then yes, they're on the hook for being able to replace that. And I like that that's in there just to protect our sellers. Next thing, and this is reason number 4, I really like this contract. Verification of square footage. It says that the buyer is aware that any reference to square footage of the premises, both real property, land, and their improvement, the house, is approximate. The square footage is a material matter to the buyer and must be investigated during the inspection period. Oops. So letting it know that, hey, if there's, why does it keep moving? Sorry, y'all. I don't know why my mouse keeps moving like that. So basically let them know, hey, if you're concerned about square footage, you need to investigate during that inspection period. Don't come to us a day before closing and say, hey, this square footage was wrong. So I like that it has that in there. Next, it says inspections, you choose only 1 or 2 options. Option number 1, that the buyer accepts the property and is as in condition, basically saying I'm not going to get a inspection. Option number 2, within blank number of days, that the buyer may inspect the property at the buyer's expense and in the same time frame, the buyer in writing will either accept the property, or if they've used a licensed contractor, they can't use Uncle Joe, but if they use a licensed contractor, to actually request the seller to make repairs. Now, this is important because I see agents mess this up all the time. This opening time frame that we always put like 10 to 14 days in, this is the time you have to both get the inspection and make the request. This is not just the inspection time, and then the second period is how long you have to make the request. So if you put 14 days in here, you have to get the inspection, any follow-up inspections, and make the repair request, or notify the buyer or seller that you're backing out of the contract, all within the said number of days. Also, it says that from that point, the seller has to respond within writing within blank number of days of buyer's request. A lot of people will put 3 to 5 days there. So once you make the repair request, how long do they have to get back to you? If the seller does not agree with the buyer's request, the seller can respond within blank number of days. And I like this because this is different than the GOR contract, because at the point that either party responds, it re-triggers a new time frame. So the way that our old purchase agreement, not old, but the purchase agreement that I used at least, that last date was basically the last day to figure it all out. So you have 14 days for inspection, 5 days to respond, 5 days to make a decision. This allows you to go back and forth, and every time you go back and forth, it restarts this clock so that you never actually run out of time to negotiate and an inspection. Next part is surveys, just basically saying that if you want a survey, you need to get that. And then you can make it contingent upon getting a survey by checking this box, and you have to outline how many days the buyer has to notify the seller in writing if they wish to void the contract based on the results of the survey. So you'll see that a lot with property with a lot of land. Maybe somebody says they have 100 acres, they get surveyed and it's only 80 acres. That could change whether or not they buy the house. So this could be where that comes to play. Closing date, reason number 5, I like this contract. You can do like we've always done, check box A and set the exact date that the closing will be. And of course, you can always change it if it's agreeable to the buyer or seller. But I really like option B, and for our E-Town and Louisville friends, you're very familiar with this part. But option B is you set a no sooner than and a no later than day. So you can put 25 to 40 days, for example. And that way, if your closing gets pushed back one day, not everybody has to go and sign an addendum over one day. So just know that's I think option B is a really good option. Possession, this outlines either you're getting possession at closing or you're getting possession by certain time, and it does say local time. So whether you're Eastern or Central, you can use this contract. Blank days after closing. Closing day not included. I like this option. This is reason number 6. I like it. It makes it very clear that closing day is not day one. So you don't have to play the guessing game on when you're supposed to give possession based on how an agent interprets this time. Condition at closing, this just basically says that they have to maintain insurance and that the property must be in the same condition at the time they bought it. If the property is damaged while sellers are moving out, then they have to make the repair. Section number 15, line 207 and 208, the buyer shall have a walkthrough prior to closing and again prior to possession. So if there's delayed possession, they get to walk through it again and make sure there aren't repairs damage. And if there is damage, then at that point, obviously the seller would need to make those repairs. If there's leases involved, you can either check box A or B saying whether or not there's leases. Any warranties, just talks about the warranties will transfer. Talks about title and general warranty deed, which is the highest form of home ownership, basically saying that it's transferring free and clear. There is one thing to note inside of here is, where's it at? Should title prove to be defective and such defect cannot be remedied before closing, seller shall pay all title fees and any reasonable out-of-pocket expenses incurred by the buyer in the process of pursuing the purchase of the property. So basically, what that says is if a property has a bad title and it can't transfer, they owe $100,000 for some crazy reason, they don't have the ability to pay that off, not only is the deal obviously done, but your buyer has the right to be paid back for every dollar they've spent up until that point, because the seller should have known that and should have checked that before putting the house on the market. Next section has to do with title insurance. Only thing to know inside of here is you can check this box. If your buyer wants to decline the protection of title insurance, never check that box. They will make that decision. The title company will talk to them about it. They get to make that decision unless they point blank are just adamant that, hey, we don't want title insurance, then you can check that box. But it does say up here that the buyer acknowledges that title insurance is strongly recommended. So we don't want to check that box unless they're just adamant they're not getting it. Other notices, if you sell a condominium, you do have to have a seller certificate. Understand that if a natural disaster, fire, or something along those lines takes the property out, then the seller has to keep insurance. Oh, where'd he go? Sorry. Keep insurance like they always have. And they also have to either, at that point, the buyer can void the contract, or they can make the repairs, get the property back in the condition it was in, and then be good to go. Additional disclosures, basically fair housing, saying that we're not going to discriminate due to race, color, sex, religion, national origin, handicap, family status, sexual orientation, gender identity, all of those things. So it's fair housing rules. You all should know that. A reminder that consumer guide and agency disclosures are required. Also, commission is due to be paid at closing. Any notices and then severability, basically saying that this should be enforced because it is a legal contract. Now, next is other provisions. I want to stop here for just a second and say this is the catch-all for anything that we haven't discussed. So if you've seen this contract is a lot more thorough than the contracts that we've been using, at least in Owensboro. In here is where you're going to need to put, based on the NAR rules, what your compensation is as a buyer's agent. So I think it was DJ I was working on a contract with the other day. And what I want you to put in here is seller to pay up to X percent, whatever percent number you need to throw in there, seller to pay up to X percent of purchase price towards buyer's agent compensation. And so seller to pay up to X percent of purchase price towards buyer agent compensation. That's what's going to put it in the contract and attach your commission as a buyer's agent to this contract to ensure that you get paid. So that's going to be one thing you're going to put in there. Obviously, you all know there's a ton of different contingencies. Reach out to me when you reach this part. If you have any questions, I'll gladly help you, guide you through it, depending on what you need. Also, any addendums. So if there's different addendums that need to be attached, a VA addendum or anything along those lines, a first right of refusal, things along those lines, you can list those here. This is another reason I like this contract, because it clearly has a space to put any addendums that you need. And then again, everybody signs here. So the buyers are going to sign. The sellers at this top section are either going to accept it or reject it. And if they're doing one of those two things, they're filling out this middle section, or, and this is, I guess, reason number, I forgot what number I'm on, but like either 9 or 10 that I like this contract, is you can counteroffer directly on this contract. You actually don't even need a whole nother contract in order to be able to counteroffer. So instead, we're going to say, the buyer's offer is rejected at this time and date. However, seller will accept, and you can put in the difference in whether it be closing cost, purchase price, or anything else that you need. All terms to remain the same. Seller sign, and then the buyers get the option to negotiate from there, or excuse me, accept or reject from there. So, and then that's the last page of this. So again, just to kind of recap, I will go over the GOR contract for anybody who wants to go over it, but I think this is just a significantly better contract, if I'm being honest, and if I'm looking at like what all this offers and how this protects our consumers. I think that this is a better contract that we should all probably start to use. So that I'm going to stop my share for a second and stop the recording, because